What's going on, everybody? My name is Andrew Golden, and I'm the director of Medill on the Wildcat Welcome Board of Directors. One of the weekly series that we're doing for 30 Days Northwestern is NYou, which is a chance for incoming students to hear from a panel of current students as they talk about their Northwestern experiences on a variety of topics. We're super excited to have four PAs on here to talk to you about what they wish they knew coming into Northwestern. This is our last NYou series, so I know you guys are probably really sad this is coming to an end. But we saved the best for last. So what we're gonna do is have the PAs introduce themselves with their name, their pronouns, their year, what they're studying, and what is their favorite thing that they have watched this summer. So, Marissa, do you want to start it off?
Hi everyone, my name is Marissa. I'm a senior, wow, in Medill. I study journalism and Spanish. I use she, her, hers. And the best thing I've seen this summer is this anime called NYou. It's about volleyball players and is literally the most dramatic, emotional, and hilarious thing I've ever seen. So, highly recommend.
Hi, I'm Alexa. I am a sophomore in School of Communication. I use she, her pronouns. And the best thing I watched this summer was Community on Netflix.
Hello, my name is Pablo. I'm a second year in CESP studying social policy with a minor in transportation and logistics, him, his. And then something I've been watching a lot is I started watching all the seasons of American Horror Stories.
Hey, I'm Jerry. I'm junior, and my major is piano performance major in BNM, but also another degree in CESP, LOC, and also a philosophy. So I'm triple major. I'm junior, and pronouns is he, him, his. One thing I watched during summer is a baby, like a baby otter was born in Zoom, and that was like one of the best ever I watched. It's so heartwarming and everything is just so smooth. And I just like feel good in the midst of social justice and COVID-19. Everything is seemed to be like unravel. And then there's a baby otter was born. It's like, oh my god, that was my epiphany.
Perfect. We have a nice mix of stuff from this summer. As I mentioned before, I'm Andrew. I'm a senior studying journalism and African American studies. I'm in Medill. My pronouns are he, him, his. And this summer, I also watch Community. So Alexa, we'll talk afterwards. But what we're gonna do is kind of open it up for. I'm gonna ask you guys some questions about your transition to Northwestern, and then after that, we're also gonna leave. Also, like if you have questions, put them in the chat box on YouTube so we can try to answer as many questions as we can. But just to kind of start out for you guys, in terms of coming into Northwestern, what was your biggest misconception about Northwestern, and how did your experience change your initial thoughts about what you would expect coming into Northwestern?
I could go first. So I know for me, I think one of the biggest, it's like a little two-part kind of answer. Like one of them, I think the biggest one that affected me was like how cutthroat it's like coming to a school like Northwestern. You think that personally, like just the environment of being such a like high ranked university, there's that pressure. So following that, I feel like I had to kind of prove myself that I belong at Northwestern. So I knew that was like the biggest struggle for me was always feeling that I constantly had to prove that I belong here. So like wanting to like take 5 classes or wanting to like I know the clearest example I have is I was able to test out of my language requirement because I knew Spanish, but I was like, oh, I need to like people here know like 4 or 5 languages and I know two. Why don't I take Arabic? And it was like the biggest mistake I've done because like I hated it. Like I did really bad in the class, but it was like all because I wanted to prove that like I belong, and then I should have been taking all these classes and wanted to keep learning languages when I didn't even needed it. So I think my like that was like my biggest thing, and it just goes back to like the environment that coming to Northwestern, I thought that I had to like kind of prove myself or be like it was gonna be really cutthroat and super competitive. And to a degree it kind of is, but also it's like it kind of depends what you want out of it. I kind of soon learned that I was already at Northwestern. I could kind of take the classes I want without having to like prove to other people that I belong here. So I think that was like my biggest thing that I learned.
Yeah, I had a similar experience, Pablo. I definitely was concerned about the academic rigor. And throughout like my first year at Northwestern, I took a mix of like STEM and then also more like humanities classes. And there's definitely some that are harder than others. But I think what surprised me was that a lot of people seem to be taking certain classes because they're just really interested in the subject. And there's a lot of discussion that goes on, and it can still be difficult, but I think that it was just a really nice surprise that people really seemed to care about the content, and they were really taking these classes because they just wanted to kind of broaden their worldview.
Okay, awesome. And another question I want to ask you guys is kind of following up on that a little bit, but like what surprised you? What was something that nobody told you to expect about college in general? That like when you got there, you were like, oh, like I hadn't, that was not on my radar. So kind of in a similar realm, but just a little bit different.
The one thing I kind of discovered is actually the use.
I can go then. I think one thing that surprised me was both like how easy and how hard it was to balance everything. So there's definitely kind of like I work for the student newspaper and I was like on different extracurriculars and things like that, as well as of course taking classes and stuff. And so I think I was surprised at both like how easy it was to juggle everything and kind of like, make sacrifices here and there, but overall have like a holistic experience. But like at the same time, there are definitely moments or like weeks. I didn't realize, like, for example, how finals week could actually, because, in high school, if you have a bunch of finals or tests or whatever, it's kind of like you get them over with and like it's over. But Northwestern, a lot of times we have midterms like frequently throughout the quarter, not just like, week 5, but like weeks 3 through honestly 9 for midterms, which is a little interesting. But I kind of wasn't prepared for like the onslaught of like a bunch of tests all the time and things, and balancing that became a little bit trickier. But overall, I think it is like really not too hard, I think, to balance extracurriculars and a social life and academics, as long as you kind of have the right mindset about it and you know that you have to make sacrifices sometimes.
Yeah, and ongoing that, I feel like it's kind of our like responsibility to kind of manage, but also the professor can be really, really useful because one mindset I inherit from in high school is like, oh, college professors are so busy, they have research, they have that, but actually they take like education and undergraduates so seriously. So for instance, if you go to office hour, they're always going to be there like in office hour, and actually they're ready to answer whatever question you have. And that's the moment you could be like realize, wow, I'm actually paying not just for the lecture, but also the connection and also the extended connection with the professor outside of lecture. And the office hour, I could not emphasize on enough. That's just like so useful, like for me personally growing, but also professionally, because you always can get a lot of stuff outside of lecture and in the office hour. The professor can answer your question tailored to your like specific needs. And that's just like one of my surprises during the study at here.
Awesome. Yeah, I think y'all brought some really good points. And I think one thing for me personally, like the time management thing was kind of a big factor that you kind of had to figure out. Like, although your schedule may seem like you have like 2 classes a day, there's also a lot of other things you can get done. I think like using your time and balancing it, using it wisely, making the most of your time is also like a fun thing to kind of it's kind of fun. It can be stressful at times, but it's also kind of fun to balance and figure things out and what works best for you, and like trying certain things and not trying other things, clubs and all that sort of stuff. So I definitely feel you guys on that sort of thing. So in terms of like Wildcat Welcome and like when you guys meet your PA, what was some advice that you got from your PA that you felt was really useful, or maybe like you didn't listen to, but in hindsight you're like, dang, I probably should listen to my PA?
I think that one thing was at the start of Wildcat Welcome, our PA was really encouraging us to talk to each other. And just us being college first years, we were still pretty shy and trying to adjust. And so the first portion of Wildcat Welcome was a little bit quieter and a little bit more awkward. But as I got to know the other people in my PA group through Wildcat Welcome and also taking classes with them, they became some of my closest friends. And so I was like, wow, I really wish that I would have, gotten to know them sooner, because it would have made Wildcat Welcome a different experience. But definitely that's some advice that I wish I would have taken sooner, but eventually it did all work out.
I came into, I came into Northwestern thinking I wanted to be a poli-sci minor. I did not realize how far from the truth that was. And so I remember I was sitting in my American government class and I was like, oh my gosh, I hate this so much. I can barely stand it. And I was like so nervous. And so because I realized that would mean I was taking 3 classes instead of 4. And I thought, like Pablo said earlier, like, oh my gosh, like I have to be taking, X amount of classes. And then I asked my PAs about it, and they were both like, yeah, just drop the class. Like, you don't have to take it if you don't want to. And so I think that's like the best advice that I've definitely used a lot over the past few years is just like, it's okay to drop a class. Like if you're not vibing with it, if it's not required, but even if it is required and you're just like not really in the mindset that quarter to take it, like you don't have to take like a class you don't like. So sometimes like myself, like I'll sign up for like maybe 5 classes. I wouldn't recommend doing that your freshman year, but sometimes like people do sign up for like an extra class and then drop it later to figure out which ones they like. There's a bunch of different strategies. I would say overall, dropping classes honestly can be your best friend sometimes because it just really allows you to relieve your pressure and like not take a class that you hate and then kind of suffer through it for 10 weeks because that doesn't really help anybody. And even like I said, distros or requirement classes you can definitely take at any point within your like 4 years or 5 years at Northwestern, pretty much. So definitely drop classes.
I think an advice that I kind of didn't do as much is like talking to professors. Like they told me that like professors are there to help, but I don't know for what reason. I don't know. I just get scared of like office hours or something like that. So I know like I ended up, I got into a class like a week late. So I missed like a whole week of an assignment that I had to turn in before like grades were due. But I don't know for what reason, like I never reached out to my professor and told him that like I finished I made them up because I was just like, I don't know. It's just nerve wracking reaching out to professors just because of like they have a lot of stuff going on. So they have like research and I don't know. I just kind of had to grow that. I'm not like, they're there to like help us, not to like, we're not bothering them. So that's something that I hopefully going forward I'm better at. It's like being able to go to like office hours and just like being able to talk to professors because it's a lot of help, and especially when you have to like clear out when you like miss an assignment or you have something to do. I really wish that I did a better working like communicating with professors because I know it would have been really helpful.
Yeah, and also another thing going on, what Marissa said about the dropping, that also applied to social life because one thing I learned during my welcome in the first quarter is I said yes to too many things. I said yes to extracurricular, I said yes to my friends. And in the end, I end up with so many things I'm actually not necessary to do and I overburden myself. And I feel like sometimes it's okay to say no, like even to your friends or even to your like other people because you need like me time. Like I feel like alone time is necessary during some like at some points of your college life, and that is 100% okay. There's no like social stigma if you say no to some things. Like that's kind of the mindset I got rid of. I'm so glad I got rid of the first quarter.
Right. Yeah, I think that was all great advice from all of you guys. And to the people who are watching, if you have questions, again, like don't be afraid to put them in the chat so we can answer them if you have any questions or concerns. One thing I want to ask you guys, you guys have talked obviously about like academics, but this past quarter in the spring, you had to learn remotely and do things over Zoom. What did you take from your experience remotely, and what advice would you give to new students who might be going through this for the first time?
I think my biggest advice is to have like a separate space. That's like what I grew that like helped me a lot. Was trying to, even if it was in my room, kind of changing it up almost every day where it was in my bed.
Route to Northwestern.
Oh, sorry about that. so then it was like creating a space, even if I didn't have like some space in my house, at least in my room that would change. So if I was like, I'll be on the floor one day, maybe sitting down or like be in my desk the next. Kind of just like even with just going from class, like having that change of like position helped a lot of being able to kind of like, I don't know, like rewire my brain to like focus again, or I'll do it like in the kitchen or in the living room, just like kind of not get stuck in just like in one place and gotta kind of get bored and tired. So I feel like that's like really helpful, is trying to find different ways of different spaces that could help you like when having to take a class.
Yeah, ongoing that, I actually have two like specific advice on that. The first one is, so here's the background. I almost finished my entire spring quarter in my pajama. And then I realized there's a problem with it because I cannot put myself into the right mindset whenever I listen to the lecture, whatever. And then I realized pajama is not the problem. It's the problem is I cannot like put myself into the mindset. So what I did is doing a little bit of ritual. For me, it's like drinking black tea. Like I boil water and I put the black tea, and then that's kind of the trigger for me to say, okay, you are going to take a lecture, like you are in this Zoom. Like that's kind of my like trick to using ritual, the like small ritual to set me up. And the second one is during task management. Like at least write down like your like goals and also paper like deadline on like master page or like holistic like page. Otherwise, you're going to lost track of the time and also different deadlines. Because for me, one trick about during like online courses is like I cannot track everything just by Canvas and everything else. I need my own system for task management, and that's just really helping out because there's not going to be a professor in lecture saying, "Oh, you have this stuff going to do or whatever." It's not that convenient anymore online. So ritual and task management, that's kind of my two advice.
Yeah, I second everything that's been said. In terms of tasks, I know that I had like a paper up with things arranged by dates and due dates. And then just for me personally, once we moved online, obviously you're looking at a screen a lot more than you would be. And so I had issues with having headaches just from staring at a screen so much. And so what worked for me, I tried blue light glasses, and I would also shift my screen to like night shift or something like that. And then also just trying to stay hydrated and going outside at least once a day if you're able to. That definitely just helped me like taking breaks just from staring at a screen.
Yeah, jumping off that, like I try to do as much stuff like manually as possible. So instead of taking notes on Google Drive or something, I would take like physical notes in a notebook, or the paper textbook ended up being cheaper than the online version. So I ordered that. Just so like you have like some breaks from like looking on the screen as much as possible, whether that's taking notes, doing your homework, submitting, you know, labs, like anything like that that you can do like on the side is really, really helpful for me. And then also, I think y'all are really lucky because I didn't get onto TikTok wave until after spring quarter had started. And so there's actually like a lot of tips on TikTok as well for different like Chrome like applications you can use, like organize your Zoom links, or like different study mechanisms people use to like use digital notes. So I would definitely say look up on YouTube or TikTok or like other video platforms, like people's advice for taking like digital notes or how to manage Zoom classes, because like honestly, I never used to watch Get Ready With Me's or whatever, but like they kind of saved my like academic career like in the spring quarter going in. I found so many great tips.
Okay, we have a question in the chat, which is, do you have advice for connecting with professors and classmates virtually? How did you guys go about that, and what advice would you have for going about that?
Yes. So I definitely took a lot of classes like by accident, like with one of my friends from my PA group, and then that's how we became friends. So I think definitely if you see someone in your PA group on the roster for Canvas or in the Zoom, just send them a quick note and be like, hey, like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited we're in this class together. Like, do you want to study together one day? Like, it can be really simple. And in terms of professors, I want to reiterate what everyone said before. It's like they're there to help you. So going to office hours, like even if it's just a chat and say hi, or be like, wow, like this reading that we did in class like was so interesting. Like, how did you find it? Are there other readings that we didn't get to see in the syllabus that are similar to that? Or hey, I just had a question about like this comment somebody said in class, like I want to talk about it. Like those are really easy ways to like set up kind of meaningful relationships down the road with professors. Or to give them feedback or get feedback yourself about how you're doing. Those are all really important because eventually when we hopefully come back to campus, like then you'll have like a few more familiar faces to say hi to. And eventually, down the road, like if you wanted letters of recommendation or advice or job opportunities or anything like that, professors are really great for that. But just in general, they're really nice humans. And like, it's definitely, I would say, go to office hours for sure. And don't be afraid to reach out if you need help with extensions, deadlines, or something's going on in your life that you need to, let your professor know about, that you won't be coming to class, things like that. It's really simple to just email them.
I think my quick tip will be you could go to classes like early or late sometime, or like stay late sometime. I know like some professors will open like just so everybody could just be there waiting, sometimes like 10, 15 minutes early. Sometimes they open up for like questions before that. So sometimes I know if I had one of my classes it was called gay history, and the professor will open it up every like 10 minutes before class just to have like conversations either from previous readings or just to like talk about anything. So that was like really nice because you're able to like it's like normal conversation with the professors, and then there's other people out there, so you get that like kind of start having dialogues with other people that one day you may see on campus. And also there's sometimes also stay after class, and so you kind of get that's like the experience you have while actually being in person. The professor normally stays after class for a little bit, able to walk up to them, be like, oh, I have this quick question about the homework or something. So they kind of still do that virtually. So being able to, sometimes I wouldn't have a question or not need anything, and I would just stay after class, and it would be just helpful to listen to other people's questions or just be there and kind of learn. And if I heard something, I would like jump into the conversation. And that was like super useful because that's how I got to meet all the professors last quarter, was just through like having normal conversations daily. And then next thing you know, they know you by your name, and they're like you just able to have that connection with a professor and be able to like reach out to them if needed. And it kind of makes it easier to what I was talking before, that it's hard to reach out to professors. So once you're able to like kind of get a little bit more comfortable with them, it makes it so much easier.
Yeah, and ongoing that, like at Northwestern, I feel like one of the things is like you do not have to be in that professor class in order to reach out. Like for instance, like sometimes I exist my maximum credits, but I still like interested in some class. I just shoot email, like professor email, like say, hi, I'm so interested in class, but I cannot do due to like my schedule, whatever. Can I just audit your class? And also another trick is like if you don't know whether or not the class is like too difficult for you, you can just reach out to the professor, say, hey, like, can I just ask you a question about like prerequisite knowledge for this class and whether or not this class is actually for me or like suitable for my level? And they're actually really responsive. I have never had a professor like didn't reply to any of my emails. Like they're using emails just like they're testing. So they're really comfortable with emailings, and you should be comfortable with it too. And not only your professor, like for the class you registered, but all the professor across campus, and they're really responsive.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing point. Personally, I did have more big lectures with, 50 to 100 people. And so in those situations, it did feel more like an in-person lecture where you don't have as much of an opportunity to talk to other students. But I was able to connect with the professors via email. They're super, super helpful. That was definitely a pleasant surprise. And then within breakout rooms, honestly, I think it's what you make of it, because you can sometimes have the choice if you want to turn your camera on or off. And so hopefully more people will be open to turning it on and being able to connect with people, since we're all online now. But yeah, definitely just taking the first step, that's the hardest part, and people are usually receptive.
Yeah, and also another advantage of NYou is like we have really high quality like teaching assistants. Like if you really feel uncomfortable at first, you can also reach out to like teaching assistant. If they cannot figure out your problem, solve your problem, they will reach out to the professor too. So that's kind of another route if you really feel uncomfortable with. But also like for majority of my class, my TA is like super helpful, and they actually love what they're doing. So that's another useful like resource that we can rely on.
Right. It's a lot of great advice. And I have one more question to wrap it up. Again, if you're listening to this and you have any questions, definitely put it in the chat. But before we wrap, I want to ask one more question. It's like I think it's like a typical college advice. Like, what is a piece of advice that you haven't already said that you would give to your freshman year self now that you've been in college for at least 2 quarters now? I know it's super deep, so just take your time.
Just initial thoughts. Something that was really helpful for me was to get some kind of like a virtual calendar or a planner to organize classes. And then also, this is personal to me, but I really prefer to go to class because I think that, it's a better experience when you're there live. And it also just helps with structure when you have the same class at, the same time every day. It can get pretty sporadic if you do miss classes and you don't have a schedule. So if you can, definitely try to manage that.
I think for me, the biggest thing that I had to learn was that, like grades and stuff you're doing don't like kind of tell you what your worth is. I knew a lot of times when you like do bad on a test or like you're just like going through something bad, like you kind of start putting yourself up. You're like far away from home, or you're just going through something like you don't like the class you're taking or something. It's just like there's gonna be a lot of kind of different environments that you're not used to. So I think I really had to learn that not to base my worth after that. That you can improve. You're gonna get better. You're still learning. It's still like it was my first year, so that was like it was my first year. It's your first time in college, so it's like I just kind of had to grow in like the way I thought, that not to be so harsh on myself, be more open to like new experiences, to not judge myself so hard. So it was like I think that was the biggest thing, was that I needed to like kind of prepare myself mentally to not be a perfectionist, that I was gonna make mistakes, because I think going to college, you want to like have this perfect road of like you want to take this, you want to get like straight A's, you want to have like this perfect internship by like your junior year. So I think we have like this idea that we want to just go to college and have like the perfect college experience of like be able to like have fun whilst like having good grades, and like not want to like have a like mental breakdown or something. But it's just like having that, it's like a college experience, you're learning, you're like figuring out who you are. So I think that was something that I really had to learn, was just like be able to accept like my experience.
And for me, one thing is very, very personal, but also relate to the Northwestern slogan. So there's one kind of statements like NYou direction is like multiple direction is your direction, right? And I feel like that's really applying to my first year experience, because I have so many friends, and some of them are saying, say, one specific professor is like really hard on grading or really hard like something else, and I was really scared. But actually, when I taking the class by the professor, I found out like the information can be distorted, and also the experience are tailored to your unique perspective. So if I can give advice to myself, like 1 year ago, would be like just trust like experience going to be unique. Like you can rely on the information from others, but your perspective is going to be so much different from others, and your Northwestern direction is going to be yours, not others. And that's kind of my like realization after 1 year, another year, and another year's experience here.
To close it out as the senior, I think it's been really interesting, over the past, like looking back at the past like 3 years of being in college and thinking like, oh, like when I came in, I was definitely like, yes, like this is gonna be the best 4 years of my life. This is when I'm gonna have the most fun. I'm gonna take like all these amazing classes. Like I'm gonna be like, like the top of my game, like whatever. But like my friend said something the other day that really resonated, which was like, if these are the best 4 years of my life, then like I don't know, because like there are like a ton of ups and downs like that happen in college. Like I've had some of my highest highs and like lowest lows like while in these like past 3 years of college. And I think especially now, considering just all that's happening in the world and in the country over the past like 6 months, like it is really, really easy to get down and like upset and like, oh, like my college experience is ruined or like whatever. Like I felt really sad that this is how my senior year is going to be. My last quarter on campus is going to be online. But I think overall it's like about just kind of taking everything in stride. So just because like one quarter doesn't really go well for you, or maybe you even had a bad year, like that doesn't mean that's going to be like the defining moment of your college experience. Like Pablo said, it's what you make of it. And like, I think what I wish I knew is I didn't have to rush everything. I didn't have to, join all the clubs right away. I didn't have to find all my best friends, like, fall quarter freshman year. Like that almost never happens for anybody. It's about the journey and like it's about learning and growing. So even if like all these terrible things have happened to me or my friends or whatever, like honestly in college, I've come out of it like a much better person. And like I'm a lot stronger and funnier and like just a better person in general than I was like when I was a senior in high school. And so I think just taking everything as like a learning experience or opportunity to grow when you can is really important, because these are going to be some really tough, like, 3, 4, 5 years for you all. But I think as long as you take the meaning out of everything, like you don't have to rush, you don't have to have like a perfect quarter every single quarter. There can be ups and downs, and that's totally fine. And that's what college is for. So just good luck. And I know that you all are going to do amazing.
Yeah, Marissa, I really agree with you. I think that just patience is something that I have to tell myself all the time, because after reflecting on my first year, which was so recently, was last year, I expected everything to just snap into place kind of instantaneously. And, that's not the way that life is. And especially right now, like we're in a very interesting point of time for everyone. And so it doesn't have to happen today or tomorrow or this quarter. And, just to be patient, because everything is changing all the time. And so that's something that I still try to remind myself, and definitely something that I hope anyone watching will also just keep in mind.
Yeah, well, thank y'all for the great advice, and I think I will also echo everything y'all said. And don't be afraid to grow. It's a part of the experience, and also don't be so focused on what you think you're going to do, because I promise you, stuff is going to change. And don't be afraid when things start to change and things don't go the way you expect it to, because that's the reality. That's not how it's supposed to go. But thank you guys for tuning in, and this is the last edition of NYou. But thank you guys so much for tuning in for the past month, and that'll wrap it up.